Oh, say, can you hear?
Yet another red light.
Well, I'm gonna spill all
the secrets you're holding
about the spaceships up there and the aliens down here and all history,
which is totally fake.
This was a very interesting man, and like I was saying, he was so intelligent, it was almost hard to hear him speak, especially when he got into the sacred geometry and how the universe was formed and how we are formed and how plant life and animal life is formed, and it's all sacred geometry. And it appears that one of the first things they have tried to do to us since grade school is lean us away from this specific type of thinking so we could not figure this out. It actually also appears that if you take our ancestry back even farther than the normal Homo sapien human race, the life in this area basically had 3 fingers. And if you take 3, that number is so important within the structure of the universe and everything else that we were evidently adapted to a 5-fingered race just to keep us from figuring it out or making it that much harder for us to figure it out. One of the things is this plant material crystal that he came up with from these glass cylinders in the backyard. This stuff is almost pure ATP, which is the fuel of the body, adenosine triphosphate, I believe. And he basically learned how to create this, and instead of having to have a complicated process of the biological system of the body called Krebs cycle create this food for the body, you could actually take this orally and feed the body just as quick and not have to ingest food and probably not even have to sleep. But that is a whole nother story. Living in Antwerp, Belgium, working for the De Beers cartel for about 10 years, they wanted him to be able to develop a synthetic diamond that could not be told apart from the real thing. And he actually accomplished that. He also was able to do in vitro, in solution, he was able to grow specific figures. I mean, like if you look at one of those Sumerian cylinder seal, the seals themselves, or maybe the flat piece of gold or clay that was rolled out. There are pictures out on the internet, encyclopedias you can see of this, of Enki and some of the other royal family of the Sumerian Empire. And he was able to grow, he could recreate those pictures in living biological material that you could view under the microscope, which meant it had to do with frequency and geometry. Anything and everything can be produced by sound and geometry. A lot of the science of UFOs and alien technology surpassed. They go outside that box, and mainstream is not so ready to go outside the box. And so we are being lied to. One of the things that George discovered in this Sumerian technology was basically a replicating device. And it's kind of shaped like an iron cross, or 2 hourglasses crossing each other, kind of. And there are some Sumerian pictures where you see this type of shape, but not that necessarily device in Sumerian architecture. But this device was able to reproduce anything. This was being done, of course, microscopically, but if you had the materials that could build this machine life size or big, you could walk through it and a clone of you would also come out the other side. And you would not die in the process. Well, in this situation, they would both be there. George's Austrian accent was so Germanic or Austrian that he was hard to understand, especially when he was talking technical stuff. And he had a friend named Tommy who used to go around with him and do a lot of his talking for him. And so actually I met Tommy first. Tommy came to one of our meetings with one of George's notebooks of sacred geometry to show us and said, you need to get this guy in here. He needs to talk to you all. This information needs to get out there. George's friend Tommy was the one that would actually go around and maybe recruit people or doctors to hear George's information. And so he decided to go to MD Anderson and talk to some doctors there. I mean, George did have 2 PhDs, and he was actually well known. He lived in Houston back in the 70s. As a matter of fact, his picture was on the front cover of a magazine called CEO 40, which was a oil industry publication. And one month, George's picture was on the cover of this magazine with the caption under it, "Can this man's technology or inventions save the oil industry forever?" Actually, at the time the Exxon Valdez disaster occurred, George had an enzyme. He had created or discovered an enzyme that would basically eat or live on oil. It would literally consume it, and the oil would go away and be inside the enzyme. He went to the powers that be and said, look, that gigantic oil carrier in Prince Edward Sound has foundered, and it's going to destroy the fishing industry in Prince Edward Sound. He said, we can take a couple of oil drums of this stuff up there in a helicopter, drop it on that oil, and it will literally eat and absorb all that oil, and we won't have to destroy the fishing population or Prince Edward Sound. The government said, sorry, George, we can't admit we have that technology. We're going to have to destroy the fishing industry and Prince Edward Sound. Sorry, don't tell anybody about this. So that was that. Anyway, Tommy does this man's talking for him, and he decided to go to MD Anderson at one point. And he said, we have this replicator, and we can replicate anything. And they said, oh, we don't believe that. We don't believe that. And they said, well, tell you what, give me some sort of microscopic, but give me something of a sample of something that you need that you don't have and can't get, and I will replicate it and have George replicate it, and I will bring it back to you. So that's what they did. They actually got a substance they had probably back on the shelf nobody was getting, but they had some sort of cancer cure. They gave him a sample of this substance. A couple of weeks later, Tommy carries this vial of stuff back to MD Anderson, and he walks in, he sees the same doctor again and said, okay, here's your stuff. And he said, what's this? And he said, well, that's that microscopic speck of stuff you gave me. Here's a whole bottle of it for you. And the guy said, oh, that's impossible. You couldn't have done that. If you did, this would be worth billions of dollars. And he said, well, there it is. Test it. Well, tell you what. He said, I'll write you a check for the test if you have it done. That way it won't even cost anything out of your pocket. And they said, well, they said it's going to cost close to like $10,000 to have this analyzed. And he said, I'll write you a check. And they said, okay, fine. Well, you write us a check. So he walked in the next day, handed them a check. They sent it off to the lab and had it analyzed. Within 48 hours, they called Tommy back and they said, could you ask Dr. Merkl to please come in here and see us? We'd like to talk to him. And he said, what for? And they said, well, we'd like to hire this man. We'd like to talk to him about this product and maybe some other products. And he said, we have a contract here for him. And they handed him a contract that was like 30 pages. Goes home and takes the contract to George. George looks at it, busts out laughing, throws it in the trash can. And he said, what'd you do? And he said, if I sign those papers, they will not only own anything that I make for them, they will own anything I conceive of in the future from now on for the rest of my life. The last I heard, that he got tired of the assassination attempts, that he might have just gone ahead and let himself expire. I truly think that was a cover story, and I believe that he's actually alive, and I believe he's on the moon in one of our installations, and he's in charge of the H3 mining operations. That a space shuttle full of the stuff could power the Earth for 50 or 100 years.
Say, can you finally
Start telling us the truth.
Protect our civil liberties and
all war?